right, welcome back, everybody. Today we have Gary WIlbers with us, and I am so excited to have Gary with us. Gary is an entrepreneur. He's a speaker. He's a coach. He's an author. He wrote a book not too long ago, so I want to share that with the viewers. But Gary is such a successful individual, and I just wanted to bring him on to be able to help some of the viewers out there maybe just achieve more in their personal lives. So, Gary, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Well, thanks for having me, Tony. I'm excited about our conversation.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. So Gary also has a website. I want you folks to go check it out. It's called goascend.biz, B-I-Z, goascend.biz. And there he shares, he has a mastermind group where he helps coach and he brings speakers in, and he does all sorts of great things through that mastermind to help entrepreneurs and help others, again, just achieve more in their life. So great work that Gary's doing. So please check it out. And then also, if that wasn't enough, you also have a podcast that you produce, you create content. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that podcast and the intent behind it, Gary?
Yeah, it's really meant for small business owners and entrepreneurs. It's Small Business Answer Man is the name of the podcast. And what I did is I really wanted to target those. And what we try to cover is really what I call my 6P business owner formula now. Those 6Ps are things like people, promotion, pricing, productivity, profit, and processes. So I bring guests on, just like Tony's come on in that finance area and stuff of profit, that's financial. I brought him on my podcast because he has that expertise with his book of Freedom at Risk. So that's the thing that I try to do is I don't feel like I know it all. I've been in business over 30 plus years and been an entrepreneur, started about 13 different companies, but I've had failures along the way also. But what I really try to do is how can we help you in those areas? Because basically a business owner, really it's about creating a formula to make business success. And that's why I love that theme. And we hit on those different areas. We sometimes veer from that, but most of the time I have guests on those areas. Like I'm going to have Tony on again. He was on at one point because you're going to be our next book in our book club, in our mastermind. Freedom at Risk is going to be our book club. And then Tony's going to come on and talk about the book and answer some questions. And we actually share that in podcast form too, each time. And that comes up about once a quarter. So excited. And I just love the podcast because I love being able to share information.
So I'm going to touch on a couple of things there because that was just a wealth of information right there. So let me unpack just two things there. So one of which is you don't know everything. I don't know everything. There's no way that any one of us can. We have to rely on each other. We have to create this network. We have to create these relationships. And that's what we do. You do with your podcast. I do with my podcast. You know, Gary is very approachable. He's send him an email, connect with Gary, right? If you need help in some way, Gary is very approachable. So I encourage the viewers to seek him out because we all need help along the way. None of us do this on our own. So that's the first thing. Go seek help. We're all willing to help each other. The second thing is I've had a certain amount of success in my life. Gary, you've been very successful in your life and all that you've done, but it hasn't come without failure along the way. And that's okay. I look at failures. I'm sure you do as well, Gary, and many of our viewers do. Failures are just part of the learning process.
Yes.
Right. So something that you had mentioned, but I want folks to understand failures is just part of the process. Don't let that paralyze you that I'm going to fail. It's part of the process. Lean on folks like Gary, who's been a successful entrepreneur. He's teaching others. He's coaching. Man, just such a wealth of information in what Gary brings to the table. So again, failure is part of the process. Seek Gary out for that. I want to talk a little bit about your book. So you wrote this book, Cultivating Positive Culture. I've read it. It's fantastic. And I just want to cover a couple of things. I actually with the book comes this note card. And I just wanted you talk about positive culture because you put many things here. It affects your mindset. It's about the choices you make on a daily basis. If you have a positive culture, you make better choices. Positive culture is created when you exercise. It's created when you influence others in your life. I know you're an influencer. I'm an influencer. We try to help people create positivity in their life. So that's built into this book. Impacts your connections by creating positive culture. Relationships are a give and take in life. And so you go through all these, there's many more bullets on here, but I wanted to share that because that all comes out in your book here. And I share with folks, they obviously can get it on Amazon, but where else can they get it? Through your website or through you if they
They
send you an
they
email, Gary?
yeah, they can send me an email. They can get it on my website, the goascend.biz. You just go down to the bottom tab and there's a shop area there that you can get to, or just send me an email at gwilbers, it's WIlbers at goascend.biz, and we'll get you one shipped out.
Awesome. Thank you for shouting out your email address. That's super important for folks to connect with you. So for the viewers, send Gary an email. Go do it now. Press pause and go do it now. And then I'm going to go to part 2 of your book, and I'm just going to bring up one of so you list 10 different action plans people can take. And I'm just going to shout out action number 3 that you put in this book. I am a person of action. I choose to seize the moment and I choose now. Why did you put that into the book, Gary?
Well, these were 10 things that I've come up with over my life. And what I found is they become kind of my statements that I want to live by. Now, do I do it every day? No, I have my failures, like we've talked about, even on the 10 action. But that's what I want to live into. And sometimes you hear people say all the time, I'm going to do that someday. And we've got to change that thinking of someday. When I retire, and then I'll be honest, I just went with a lunch with a friend this week and stuff, and his wife passed away 3 years after he retired. So they didn't get to do those things that they planned. So you can start now, but whatever that action that you want to take. I get a lot of people because they share my story of my exercise. I used to be 275 pounds and I lost 75 pounds over 11 months. Now I was younger then. I was in my mid 30s at that time, but still the thing is I decided that I was going to start then. And that made a change, a ripple effect, because I'm now 55. I don't have a problem saying my age. I look younger today than I did when I was 35, 36.
Yeah,
If you
you're
see
looking
some of the
great.
old pictures. But the thing is, we've got to choose to start now, and that becomes the key. What is the action that needs to get you started? I've come up with a little phrase. I have to share this with you, Tony. It's recent and stuff. You know what tar is, right? They put it on houses sometimes to keep water out. They put it on roads, and then with asphalt tar, it's very sticky and stuff. Well, this is a concept I've come up with is we've got to think more. We got to think more of what we want. But then we've got to turn our thinking. A lot of people will dream and they'll think, but they'll never take the action. The A is for action. What is the action that you want to take? And when we take that action, if we get consistent, and it's about discipline, it's about creating a habit, whatever it is, you'll ultimately get the results you want. So TAR is thinking, action, result. Think how sticky that is if you actually do it. But the problem is today we sometimes won't think enough because we're allowing society to just take us places. And instead, we've got to take action on that. And that's, to me, was the big one there. To be quite honest, I was writing it more for myself than anyone else, but I believe it becomes one of them life lessons you share with others.
No, I love that. So thinking, action, results.
Yeah.
TAR. I love that. And so I'm going to share 2 personal stories. Well, maybe one's not personal. One is an article that I read from Psychology Today. I just read it recently, and it's right along those lines there in terms of taking time to think. What they basically shared in that Psychology Today article was about bored people are more creative. They've done tests. Bored people are more creative. Now, I'm not suggesting, people just go be bored and sit on a beach or do nothing for hours on end. But the essence of the article was put your state of mind in a boredom state once a day, once a week, to be able to allow yourself some creativity space to think about maybe some bigger picture things for yourself, for your family, for your health, for your wealth, right? For your safety, whatever it is, put yourself in that place of boredom, because we all know the world is a very crazy place. Our lives are incredibly hectic. And so just think about that once a day. It doesn't have to be long, could be 10 minutes, could be 15 minutes. Put your play in that place of boredom, to be creative, to think, take action, and achieve the results in your life that you want to achieve. So that was an article that resonates so much with what you teach in your coaching and your mastermind, in your book. And the way I put that, because I want to share my own experiences, to help people. What I do each and every day, I go on a walk. I go outside, I go for a walk. And during that time, that's my quiet time, my boredom time, I guess you could say,
Right.
to think. And I'm thinking not about, so to speak, which emails I have to respond to or which podcasts I need to schedule or anything like that. I'm allowing myself to think of bigger level, bigger actions, more change, bigger. Who can I help in a bigger way? Those thoughts during that time of, so to speak, boredom, or when I'm thinking, develop actions. So my action plan. So when I come back to my house, to my computer, there's usually one or two big things I want to achieve. And then I send the email, or I make the connection, or I get with my VA and I say, let's do this today. That turns into results. So that's how I implement my TAR method: thinking, actions, results. I love that, man. I love that, Gary. Thank you for sharing that, because action is such a big part of being successful as an entrepreneur and just as a person in general, right? So thank you. I want to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship. You've been a very successful entrepreneur, and we talk a lot about being resilient as individuals. How do we achieve resiliency in our lives, whether it's a garden, whether it's we put a little extra money away in a savings account. We try to achieve some resilience as individuals, but we never really talk about resiliency for entrepreneurs. And I feel like they're being left out of the equation. Some entrepreneurs succeed and other entrepreneurs don't succeed. Do you have any thoughts, anything you can share in terms of why some succeed and others don't? Like, have you cracked the code?
I don't know if I've cracked the code, but I have found some things that are so important. Is one is so many entrepreneurs and business owners that it's a philosophy I talk about. As a business owner, the business owns you. And a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs, even, they call themselves entrepreneurs. So they may not say they're a business owner, but they own a business, but it actually owns them. They're actually trading dollars for their job, their job. But they are the owner of it, but they're so committed to it that they still can't even get a vacation. So the other thing is sometimes the second word that people use is entrepreneur, and you use that. They're an entrepreneur. So now they start to see a little bit of sunlight. They start to put some systems and processes in place, but they go back to this cycle and they kind of play the roller coaster. One year they're up in sales, next year they're down. Why are they up and down? Well, it's normally they're the bottleneck. Because so what does it do? They're not resilient because one year they're up, next year they're down, next year, or maybe it's 2 years up, 2 years down type of cycle. They're on that roller coaster all the time. But what actually happens is they're the bottleneck. What I want people to think about is for their business, I want them to become a CEO, the chief executive officer. Yeah. If you go to any big company, you pick whichever company you want, big company, they're not doing the day-to-day operations. They're looking at the big picture. And then you can't get there day one. I'm not saying that. But ultimately, your goal should be that you are in that place. And I think one of the things that business owners to be more resilient is they don't protect their time. They don't schedule that time. What you said in the morning about you create your action of what you want to get accomplished and stuff. Instead, they become available all the time. And the only challenge to that is you want to be available for your employees. You want to be available for your customers. But the only thing is when you make yourself totally available, you become needed and you like it.
Yeah.
So as business owners, it becomes an addiction almost.
Yeah.
It's something that we like. I'll never forget when I moved out of my office where we had our retail stores when I was in the wireless business. I mean, I could be in the action just by walking up front. And guess what? I loved the action because I knew a lot of my customers and I could interact with them and do whatever I needed to. And of course, they would come to me. But when I moved over to a totally separate office out of that day-to-day interaction, the first week or so, I'll be honest, Tony, I was kind of like, whoa, what's going on here? I don't have enough to do.
Yeah.
Because why? I was addicted to work. Yeah. I was addicted to be there. But my job was see a bigger picture. I had over 100 employees. I had 15 locations. I needed to do more than be in that day-to-day interaction. I needed to see the big picture and plan not for tomorrow, but for next month, 3 months, 6 months down the road and get that picture in place. So the thing I will tell him, some people can't see themselves there. What I want you to just think is, I want you to just set a weekly plan. What are your top 3 priorities that you have this week that you must do? Tell yourself what that is. And then each day, pick your top 3 that you have each day that you need to do. Now, if it's to cover the floor or if it's to, clean the bathrooms and stuff, guess what's
Mhm.
happened in your business? You are the business owner.
Yeah.
So how do you need to take yourself out of that? And it really comes down to being willing to delegate more and creating those processes that allow other people to run your business. Now, you may be a one-person operation. So if you're a one-person operation, then the question is you have to put boundaries in place to say, I'm working from 8 to 5 or whatever the number is for you, 9 to 4 or whatever that is. And then that becomes your boundaries. And when you do, and even if you're working from home, you
Mm.
go close the door, you leave the computer there, and now you interact with your family or your friends, or you have something scheduled that you go out and have dinner or date, whatever it is. But set those boundaries for yourself and put yourself in that position, because that allows you your time. Because what's happening is, and I was in this business, these wireless phones are great. But the only problem is they've created where now we're 24/7.
Yeah.
And people will say, well, I've got to respond to email all the time. Now, I don't know every person's business, so they have to decide that. But on these phones, you don't have to get email on them. There's a setting that you can go in there and turn your email off after hours. And on most email senders, there's a setting that you can set up. Like on mine right now, if you send me an email, so if you're sending me an email, great. I respond twice a day now. I don't respond every time someone sends it, because I'll be honest, it's an addiction if I do. So I'm setting boundaries of what works for me. And I think that becomes the key for entrepreneurs, business owners. Set those boundaries.
Yeah.
Our business will still run and thrive without us. Actually, a lot of times, if we set up the systems, they'll run even better.
Even better.
That becomes
Absolutely.
the key.
I've found that and sounds like you found that out as well.
Yeah.
So again, and this is just stuff that, if the viewer has a business, right, is an entrepreneur of some sort, this is why we say create these connections, create these relationships, reach out to Gary, reach out to me. You're going to find that we've all walked this walk. We've all lived this life. Chances are anything you share is not going to be anything we haven't experienced already. So I'm going to touch on 3 things that you spoke about there. Well, really 2, I guess it comes down to. So you spoke about setting 3 goals per week, which I think is enormous, because goal setting is such a huge part of being successful. If you don't write down your goals, if you're not thinking about your goals and then putting pen to paper and writing them down, how do you expect to really achieve them if they're not front and center every day, when you're working, you're taking action towards them? So write down those 3 goals each and every week and work towards them. But the thing I wanted to, expand on that is, this is what entrepreneurs should be doing, but it's also what we can also do for those viewers out there that aren't entrepreneurs. You can do this in your personal life, right? I speak with a lot of folks who, play the victim, and I call time out. I'm like, well, what are your goals? What are you doing to work towards them? And if you're procrastinating, procrastination is sometimes a good sign. It's a good sign that you're not the one to do that goal that you've set out, right? Create a financial plan. Well, I've been procrastinating, Tony, for the last, 10 years on creating a financial plan. Well, the sign of procrastination is because you don't have the right skill set to do that. You're either uneducated or you're scared, or, there's a number of things why people procrastinate. And if you're procrastinating, the number one sign is you're not the right person to do that for whatever reason. So go find the right person to do that and get that off your list and go accomplish that goal with the help of somebody else, right? Starting a business is a very difficult thing to do. I know that, that we've been there, done that. Having somebody to help you through that process, that coach, that mentor, that buddy, that peer, is so important. So go find folks in your life to achieve those goals. So I wanted to touch on that. And then also, you you mentioned, you like to, you gravitated towards the front end of your retail store because you had great relationships with your customers, which is important, and that's where you gravitated. When you walk to the front of that store, I'm sure if you were rigged up mentally with wires and whatnot, a ton of endorphins would be going
Yes.
off because you were just so in providing value and having fun with your customers. And man, your endorphins were going off, and that's great. And you were in a place of comfort. But to be successful, sometimes we have to put ourselves, as I say, we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable,
Mhm.
right? We need to be uncomfortable. So putting ourselves in that CEO spot and allowing us that time to think, create some actions, to create some results is super important. We have to be uncomfortable for some amount of time. It gets easier over time. It does. I want to share with the viewers. Again, this is something, like Gary said, this isn't something that just changes in one day, right? This may take, 3 months, 6 months, a year, depending on how you're built to do this. So great stuff. So thank you for sharing that. So part of being comfortable and setting goals and whatnot is having the right team in place to be a successful entrepreneur and to have resiliency. Some of the things I've done is I've put VAs, virtual assistants, in place. I'm not sure if you're using virtual assistants, Gary, but I'm sure many of the folks you chat with do. Can you share with the viewers how we can use VAs to be more successful and more resilient as a CEO of a company?
Well, you have to give up some of the things you're doing. I mean, one of them that I've realized is, and I'm in the process of this, so I'm not done yet, but I'm in the process of it. And one of them that I found that is taking a lot of my time was, number one, was social media, and number two was email. So on the social media side, I have someone that takes care of that for me. They post it. I've actually deleted all the apps on my phone. The only way I get to social media is through my computer now. And part of it was when I saw those little box down at the bottom that I had 5 people that responded or did something, I wanted to respond. I didn't have to do that anymore, but I was still responding. So I just took it off my phone on that. I put a lot out on social media, so I understand the good of social media. I mean, I had a client that signed up 5 people into a leadership class I had because of the social media posts that we put out. So I know the value of it and I believe in it yet. But for myself, I distinguished, I don't have to be that available, that I have someone taking care of that. So I have someone helping with that. I'm in the process of right now, I'll be honest, I'm working on this, Tony. So I don't have it perfected yet. I told you I went down to 2 days, 2 times a day, but this is part to get people set up that I'm not going to respond immediately. I'm going to respond to you, but I'm in a process of putting a VA in there and putting some protection in that side of it. Now, what does it take from me? I have to be prepared for that. I'm creating some templates now so they can get back. Like I realized the other day, I was responding to a speaking engagement, and normally I respond in about the same method. That would be a simple template to have in place. And then it may change what needs to go in there, but I can tell the VA then this is what I need in there on that, because I'm normally sending some follow-up information. And normally the follow information is about the same thing every time. So I'm creating some of those templates to be able to respond back to be able to get to them. Plus, the other thing I'm doing is, and a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, I'm sure have this challenge, you've subscribed to a ton of stuff. And, I hate unsubscribes. But you know what? If you're really not going to buy anything from that organization anymore, maybe the best thing is to unsubscribe. Yeah. And then the other thing is I've always had one email. I own my business. I look at my own email. I'm not on with somebody else in a business. So I can have one email. But guess what that's done? Everything goes into that one email. So right now I'm in the process of switching that. And I'm going to have a personal email. And I'm going to even say in that personal email when they get it that if you want me to see this information, you better send me a text because I only check this one about once a week.
Yeah.
Because my personal email, I'm not going to be tied to it. I'm not going to have it come to my phone because then it'd just be another disruption. Yeah. So I'm setting what we talked about earlier, some boundaries or some limits of what I need to do. But using people to help you, that comes down to delegate. When we delegate, we get more done. And as entrepreneurs and business owners, guess what? We're take charge people. We're go-getters. We're action takers and stuff on that side. But one of them that we're not an action taker most of the time is for ourselves. So we wonder why we're stressed, burned out, and overwhelmed, and we're not resilient.
Yep.
It's because we're taking too much on. Find the tools and use the tools that will help you. A VA will help you. Delegate. If you've got staff members, do you have to do this? I had someone say in processes that it was on my podcast one time. He says, the gentleman was 20 years ago when you had to take the checks to the mail or to the bank, and you had to deposit them. You had to write out a deposit slip. So you got to think this was 20 years ago. So let's just use it as the mail. Some people still go to the post office to pick up their mail. Well, could there be someone else on your staff that could go pick that mail up? But you say, well, it only takes a half an hour every day. Well, a half an hour over a week is 2.5 hours, right? 2.5 hours in a month is how long? 2.5 hours in a year. Think about that. You change that one process. How can it change for you? And the thing I would tell you to do is write down the things that you feel like. Just right now, if you want to pause now after you hear me say this, write down the processes that you think you would like to delegate to someone else. Just write down the list. Don't start writing them out. Just write down that list of processes that's there. Then pick one of them and tell yourself you're going to delegate that to someone else within this next week. And just think of a difference. If it takes 2 hours a week, let's think 2 hours a week over 50 some weeks. We'll say you take 2 weeks of vacation. So over 50 weeks, you've just saved yourself what? 100 hours.
Yeah.
That's on
Yeah.
one item.
That's powerful. So for the viewers, yeah, go ahead, pause this video. We won't take offense. I promise. We won't take offense. But that is very, very powerful, Gary, because I know I've done it. I've, taken a look at a lot of my repetitive tasks, and those repetitive tasks you're right. So easy to put a system in place to give to a VA, and now that's off your plate. And somebody's handling it in the same way you would handle it, but it's off your plate. And now you got that bandwidth to go focus on something else. So very powerful stuff. And I want to share, VAs don't have to be expensive. I have VAs that help me. I have offshore VAs, a couple of them. I have 2 offshore VAs that help me. They're about $8 an hour offshore. But then I also have a couple of VAs here in the States that help me that are more like $25. Right. So there's the spectrum there, just kind of sharing the cost with the viewers. It doesn't have to break the bank. It doesn't break the bank for me. $8 an hour. Wow. Imagine what a VA can get done for $8 an hour. A ton of value there. And oh, by the way, a lot of these offshore VAs, they are incredibly happy to have the work, and they do a great job, and they speak English, and there's a lot of goodness that comes with it. So I want to move on to talking about something that's very much in the headlines today and is very much a concern for some of the folks that are thinking this through, and that is AI, artificial intelligence. Now, that can either help or hurt an entrepreneur build resiliency. Give us your thoughts in terms of where you see AI going and how it may help or hurt the entrepreneur.
I think the thing is, I think it's on the mindset of the entrepreneur, because there's some think it's going to replace them, or it's going to replace what they're selling, or it's going to replace their business that's there. The only thing is, they don't have emotion. They're not a human. They can't reason everything out. The thing is how will it change your business? And this is the big topic I've been talking about with a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs is we've got to be willing for change. Now, the last 3 years, we can talk about COVID and everything. It wasn't just COVID. Things are changing. The business landscape is changing. But are you changing with it as a business owner or entrepreneur? Even as a person, life has changed. Just think about what they had in the, 1930s versus what we have now. In 100 years, it's going to change dramatically. So the question you have to ask yourself, are you willing to change? And I think with AI, what we've got to look at, how can it benefit me? I mean, I asked my one VA to go pull some information for me because I wanted some facts and details. And she went in and pulled them on certain categories and stuff. She did that in less than probably 30 minutes. Yeah. Where the old way, we would have went to Google and we could have pulled that information, but we would have probably took a couple hours.
Yeah.
Think of that difference, what it did. Now, that gave me the information. What I had to do now is decide, how do I put that in my presentation? And then we did double check a little bit, make sure, but most of it I was using some stats by NFIB and different sources, Small Business Association and things of that nature that I wanted to share with people. So I was able to cover that, but it gives me that information quickly. But the thing we have to realize is, how can it make things quicker? You can go in and ask, and it's something that we just have to realize, how can it make our life easier? Again, we can resist and say, oh no, that AI stuff, that's corrupted, that's bad stuff, it's the worst thing in the world. Or we can decide, how can I use it to benefit myself and benefit my business? And I think that's the question we have to ask ourselves. There's some people that's never went off of, now they order their food online and they either go pick it up or they have it just delivered to them. Think about the first time you went in. I don't know about you, but the first time I went in the grocery store and you had to scan your own groceries, I'm like, I'm not doing that. Pay them to do that.
Yeah.
Guess what I do now? I go in and scan them because what happens? I can do it quicker and I'm out faster.
Well, and sometimes they don't even have a cashier. I was just in a hardware store and they didn't have a body at the checkout. It was all you had to scan it yourself. And
Yeah.
that's a way they're using automation and in some degree some AI to be able to achieve some efficiencies. They're not scared of it. To your point, they're not scared of it. They know it's coming. They're looking into the windshield, right? And they're saying, this is coming. How do we use this? And I think AI, to build resiliency around your business as an entrepreneur, we have to do exactly what you're sharing. We have to lean into it. What is AI? Where can it help us? How can it help us build our brand? There's so much that can be done on social media with AI. My VA out of the Philippines uses it, and God bless him, he's able to take content and using AI be able to get it not only create messages but also visually appealing as well with AI. So we're using it to build our brand, to be able to reach more people, and there's a ton of efficiency that comes with this new technology to be able to help people. So if you're an entrepreneur, yeah, I echo what Gary's saying. Don't be scared of it. Lean into it. Learn how to use it.
Tony, one thing I want to add to that, you talked about efficiency. It makes us more efficient. Well, we have to do that in our business. And I've been talking to business owners about this a lot because why? One of the reasons is a buddy of mine, Darren Watchak, wrote an article called The Demographic Drought. And what it is, a lot of people think because unemployment's low right now, that's why I can't find good people. I can't find people and stuff on that side. But when unemployment goes back up, guess what? You got other headaches because then you don't have as much business coming in. But you're still going to have this challenge because when you look at the stats, we are now under the statistical, I have a hard time saying that, number. You have to have 2.1 to replace what we need in the marketplace. The largest generation, the boomers, are going out of the workforce. Now we have Generation Z in the workforce. They're under the 2.0 number. They're under 2.0. We need 2.1 to maintain. So the question is in business, you're not automatically just going to find more people to cover and solve those problems. Now you can find them in different ways, like we've talked about with VA, but it's getting business owners to think that's part of this change. Am I willing to change? Because I can resist, say no, or I can adapt. And that's the key. And right now in business, it doesn't matter if you're business. I'll even say even in government somewhat, but schools, education, everybody's having to change.
Yeah.
The people that don't change, guess what's going to happen? They're going to be the one put by his side. So when I talk to business owner entrepreneurs, what does that mean? You are the one that your business is going to get passed by.
That's
How
right.
many people tilt websites, oh, I'm not going to have one of them websites. How many companies do not have a website now? If you don't have a website, you're probably not in business.
That's right. That's right. And these are the reasons why I love chatting with smart people like you and others out there who have done it, who have been successful. And really, you kind of stretch my own head, my own mind to say, wow, am I really doing all that I am supposed to be doing? Am I in the front of the store doing all the happy feel good things and the endorphins going off? Or am I in the back of the store really, talking to smart people like you and others saying, holy cow, what's going to eat my lunch next month, next year? That's where I need to be as an entrepreneur and really be stretching my head and like struggling, like, and allowing myself some downtime, some boredom time to be creative. And how do I solve these problems? The only reason why I have VAs is because I've chatted with other entrepreneurs and they're like, yeah, we've hired a VA to do this, that, and the other. And I'm like, maybe I should be hiring VAs, right? I mean, the same thing with AI. I've had others in my life who would say, yeah, we're using AI for this, that, and the other. And I'm like, huh, what's AI? And I have to get smart about it, right? And so, there's a lot of things happening out there and folks need to connect with smart people like you, Gary.
But you're willing to learn. That's the key too. When we talk about change, the willingness comes from, we have to be willing to learn. When we're not doing that, there's people that says, I don't pick up a good book like Freedom at Risk or Cultivate Positive Culture.
Yeah.
I don't read, I don't care. That's something you have to do. You've got to be willing to learn. Society is changing, I love college kids when I get to talk to them, Tony, because they say, oh, I'm done with school. My son just graduated and several of them said, guess what my gift was for him? Books.
Good for you.
Because I said, guess what? Now you're going to learn from life. You're going to probably learn in business too, but you're going to learn from life. So now your real education gets started. And
I have
that's the key.
I have so much fun chatting with you, Gary, because you spin off so many thoughts in my head, and I know we both have a fixed amount of time here, but one of the last nuggets I want to share with the viewers, and I want to get your take on it, was so I've been going through this, again, as I'm in my board time, as I'm thinking through things, I'm thinking about things that I'm struggling with. And so my mindset or my thought is I'm trying to wrap around, am I struggling with it because it's something that I am failing at, or am I struggling with it because I'm actually learning from what I'm doing? Because I'm doing a lot of new stuff. I'm putting myself out there. And is it struggle for struggle's sake? And this is how it is? Or is it struggle because I'm learning during this point in time and it's going to get better? And so that's one of the things that I'm trying to, again, you and me, we're always going through this process of thinking and changing and evolving and working to do better. Some things work, some things don't, but we have to keep trying things. And that's one of the things that I'm going through. And I don't know if you've experienced that, where you're kind of like, geez, I'm really struggling over this. Am I doing it right? Do I have the right people? Or is this just a point in time where I'm just learning during this struggle?
I think it's very similar like technology. You go to the adoption stage, it's that first
Mm,
stage, and then we go to the next stage. So I think it's the learning process, to be quite honest. I don't have it defined out how it looks, but to me, it's kind of like when they talked about, wireless phones, when that came in, there was an adoption phase. There's some people that jump on right away and get in right away, same way like
yeah,
AI and chat GPT and all those things that's out there. And then there's others, they have to see it mature a little bit and say, oh, does that really help? And then that's when they jump on. But I
right,
think for us in learning, it's kind of like that. And that creates a challenge for us because
yeah,
we're learning some of those new things. So we're always going through those struggles. But then as we go through that, we get better at that. Just like the first time you hired your VA, I'm sure there was some struggles that went through that. That wasn't just like, oh, turn my stuff over to the VA and this stuff is done. Wow, great. This
yeah.
is awesome.
As a
No,
process.
there was that struggle, that
Yeah,
process that goes through it. And business is like that. And life is like that. We learn as we go. But the thing is, that I want to stress is we have to be willing
yeah,
to learn. We
yeah,
have to be willing of them struggles and know that we did that.
yeah,
When I talked about my weight loss, when I started that, I had to be willing when I walked to the gym. We had a new guy come in body pump a couple weeks ago. The first week after our first day after he did it, I sent him a text and said, "Hey, it was great to see him because I know him and things of that
yeah,
nature, and friends of ours and stuff, and great to see you." Thing. He says, "Oh my God, my body, my arms feel like they're gonna fall off." And I said, "Hey, it gets better." Second time, he said it wasn't much better. Guess what? He's not complaining anymore.
yeah,
Because why? The body's adapted. That's
yeah.
what learning's like.
Yeah, and the mind adapts as well, right? Same
Exactly.
thing.
Yeah.
The mind eventually will adapt. So, Gary, I am so grateful for having your time today. You've shared so much wisdom. I appreciate you, and I'm sure our viewers appreciate you as well. Again, for folks, the viewers, please go out, grab Gary's book here, Cultivate Positive Culture. I'm sure Gary can send it to you much cheaper than you can buy it on Amazon. So send him an email to get the book. Gary, what is your email address?
G Wilbers, WILBERS at GoAscend, GoAscend.biz.
Excellent. Excellent. Gary, thank you so much. And your website again, goascend.biz, B-I-Z. Check him out there. Check out his mastermind, all that he offers. Great, great person to network with and connect with. So, Gary, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate you, my friend.
Well, Tony, thanks for allowing me to share with the audience. And number one, thank you for what you're doing because you're allowing people this time to do some of the TAR method that we talked about, to truly think, to take action and get the results they want in your life. So thank you for pouring into others. I appreciate you, my friend.
Absolutely. You be well. Thank you.